Rascal Does Not Dream of a Bunny Girl Senpai blew up on the scene when it first came out, for a myriad of reasons. The writing, flames. The characters, flames. The name, insane. But that was all the way back in 2018, and the landscape has changed a lot since then. I mean, did everyone know that Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus is the sequel? The show was famously shorthanded to Bunny Girl Senpai. Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus just sounds like a prepubescent teen figuring out what every grumpy adult in a Christmas movie believes. And for the people who do know it's a sequel, how many of them care 7 years on? Now, there hasn't been no content in this franchise over that time. There was a movie.
There's 3, actually.
There was one movie that was well advertised, and then 2 shorter 70-minute films which just sort of appeared. Barring the first one, Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl, that one sounds like a sort of Inception spin-off with a dream within a dream. Foreshadowing, not that far off.
Relatively obvious.
To my knowledge, barring a limited cinema run, these films have not had an official release in the West, and Dreaming Girl only had the official release a month before season 2 started. So unless you're one of those lucky people who watch the extremely limited cinema releases, or bought the Blu-rays which are $50 each for, again, 70-minute movies, you'll have quite the glaring blind spot going into season 2. Well, that's where I come in. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that happened in these films, specifically what I think is important going into season 2, and the insane stuff that happens, because let me tell you, it's crazy. I've watched this movie twice, and I didn't really like it the first time around, at least not in comparison to season 1. Let's split Dreaming Girl into 2 parts, informative content and emotional content. When I first watched the movie, I liked the informative stuff. The movie covered most of the things I expected it to in something that would conclude the storyline set up in Rascal Does Not Dream of a Bunny Girl Senpai, but still had the ending be open enough for more content. But a lot of the emotional beats annoyed me because they felt contrived or just there for fan service. The movie is a time travel movie, but not in the same way most films do time travel. With ones like Back to the Future, the main character is the time traveller, but with Dreaming Girl, Sakata is not the one who time travels, but adapts to the changes that the time traveller brings. We, the audience, follow his perspective, and throughout the film it's slowly revealed what the time traveller Shoko-san is trying to change. I'm going to refer to the older version of Shoko as Shoko-san, and the younger version of Shoko as Shoko-chan, because that's how the show does it. And when I slowly unfurled what she was doing, the majority of the emotional beats fell into place. The reason I found the utilisation of time travel in Dreaming Girl so engaging was because it didn't do what every other piece of time travel media does, slap a paradox on the problem and call it good writing. Take Blink, everyone's favourite episode of Doctor Who. The Doctor gets his time machine, the TARDIS, stolen, and when he gets it back, it's because he has a script to read from which tells him what to say, as people from the future wrote down the transcript of what he was saying in a recording of him reading that exact transcript which was given to him at an earlier point in time. In that case, we have a loop. What came first, the script of the recording or the recording of the script? Ain't no chickens here. In my eyes, each loop is different. Let's say in the 30th iteration of the loop, Dr. 30 has gotten the script from Sally Sparrow 30, where she had been watching a video of Dr. 29, who got his script from Sally Sparrow 29. At some point, this will go back to a timeline 1, where no previous Sally will exist to give the Doctor a script. But of course, in the writing of the episode, without the transcript, the Doctor is stuck back in time and Sally Sparrow probably dies, because in reality the script would not exist as it doesn't come into fruition organically outside of the loop, unless the original timeline made the loop. What I mean is, in a version of events where the Doctor is stuck in the 1960s and he has no transcript, he may be able to solve the problem in such a way that the transcript is then created. Maybe he made the videos for 2007 hoping someone would watch them and then help him, or, as he is essentially ageless, waited out the 40ish years to get back to 2007 to get his TARDIS back, and then go back to 1960s to pick up Martha. Maybe if he did wait for 2007, he meets Sally Sparrow and they have all of their conversations face to face. The Doctor then realises he met an older Sally Sparrow when he himself was younger and decides to write all of the information down and then gives it to Sally Sparrow, who then will give it to a younger version of himself when she meets that version of him. But this is now Doctor 2. Doctor Who, Doctor 2. So when he is trapped in the 1980s, he doesn't have to worry about going the long way round to 2007, makes the recordings of the script, and barring some streamlining and actual dialogue, the loop is created. In my head, the only way a paradox can come about is if it develops by streamlining in a working, non-paradoxical set of events. Yes, I think about this too much. Yes, Doctor Who should hire me. What has this got to do with Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl? Well, I'm glad you haven't asked. There is a phrase at the beginning of the film, 3 things someone wants to hear. You tried your best, thank you, and I love you. Implies a time loop as Shoko-chan heard it from Sakata, who heard it from Shoko-san. But we then learn that Shoko-san is not a future version of Shoko-chan, but has come from a history different to the one in the movie, meaning that they're not in a time loop. But Shoko-san came from a different timeline, timeline A, and series 1 and this movie is set in a timeline B, and when the movie ends, we're in timeline C. The phrase has a set origin in timeline A, and it wouldn't matter how many times timeline B has looped, as if you went back enough loops, you would find the cause to all of the effect. I really like that. When I first watched the movie, I really enjoyed the idea of there being an entire set of events we never saw, and that any discrepancies I had in the movie could be explained from the changes from timeline A to timeline B. I did not get emotionally invested when I first watched this movie, partly because I was dumb, I will fully admit that. I was confused about the geography as I didn't understand the importance of the aquarium versus the Enoshima light show, or how far the two were from each other. I thought Shoko-san was annoying at the beginning of the movie when she appeared out of nowhere, and I felt like the wedding thing was very out of left field and was just a contrived bit of fan service to make figures. And when Mai died, I didn't care because I knew she wasn't going to stay dead. Come on, do something. And then when Sakata went back in time like 5 minutes later, I just saw the whole sequence as a waste of time because it felt like so much whiplash to me. Most of these issues I had were resolved when I rewatched the movie, except for one big issue. I still didn't like the ending. Sakata is split into 2 persons, one wanting to save Mai, the other wanting to save Shoko. They then combine when Sakata saves his own life, representing how Sakata now wants to save both girls and himself. He goes to Shoko-chan to tell her this, but she apologizes for making him feel obligated to save her and shows she wants to go back in time so that they never meet, not allowing Sakata to go back in time and fix things. She seemingly passes on and Sakata and Mai say a final goodbye to Shoko, and then as the new year passes, time is rewritten and we are now in the new timeline, timeline C. Why did I not like this? In the movie, Sakata and Mai did not earn this happy ending, where no one dies. The entire movie was revolving around the idea that one of the 3 had to die, and to me the homework scene was just kind of brought up near the beginning so it could be rediscovered at the end. Sakata's arc in this movie was wanting to fix Shoko's puberty syndrome, learning that he dies so she can live, which leads him to decide to let Shoko die when Mai begs Sakata to live, then realizes Shoko-san was always planning for this to happen, then choosing to sacrifice himself because of that selflessness, losing Mai as a result of that, realizing he can't handle losing Mai at any cost and wanting to go back, reaffirming that he can't save Shoko if he wants to save Mai, and by saving Mai, he fuses with the earlier version of himself who was still motivated to save Shoko. Now, finally wanting to save both girls and himself, when he is finally resolved to save the 3 of them, the result is just given to him, without him fighting for it. All of his actions up to this point were not in service of saving the 3 of them. Up until the 2 Sakatas fusing, his arc was more going down the road of him realising he can't save Shoko without losing Mai, and as Mai is more important to him, he would have to do something horrible and willfully not save Shoko to achieve that goal. But him doing something like that is so unlike him. It is a big step in his character to actually do that, to grow, to have an arc. Mai is the exact same, initially wanting to help Shoko's puberty syndrome, realising she can't without losing Sakata, and making the decision to sacrifice herself to save Sakata without knowing that would save Shoko. The arc for these two is finally having confirmation of how much they love each other and how far they would be willing to go for each other no matter how morally grey, which is super interesting and is a complete story in and of itself. But then of course this is too dark for this type of story, so when Sakata and Mai have confirmed how much they love each other by ensuring each other survive, they decide that Sakata should go 3 years back in time to save Shoko, but risk losing their relationship. That could have been a whole other movie. The movie could have began with the older Shoko showing up and saying, "Hey, I need you to go back in time and save me or one of us three is going to die, but you may lose your relationship with Mai in the process, LMFAO." This would mean Sakata would have begun with the goal it took him the entire movie to get to, and the film would have had the stakes of, how do I save Shoko and ensure I still have my relationship, as the viewer is heavily invested in Sakata's and Mai's relationship and wouldn't want to see it end, even if it meant saving Shoko. Part of me thinks that this should have been the movie and what we got was kind of a waste of time, but Sakata never got the chance to go back in time, and the result just happens without us seeing Sakata, the protagonist, go through this journey and going through the trials and tribulations of saving himself, Mai and Shoko without the risk of losing the relationship ever coming into play. I do not believe Sakata's and Mai's actions throughout the movie earned them the perfect happy ending that they got. They wanted to fix Shoko's puberty syndrome without anyone dying at the beginning of the movie, and they wanted to fix Shoko's puberty syndrome without anyone dying at the end of the movie. They spent the entire movie going backwards and then returning to square one, like the first 23 episodes of Steins Gate, where Akabe tries to get to his original timeline. But unlike the 24th episodes of Steins Gate, where Akabe then goes on a whole new journey to get to this perfect timeline, Sakata and Mai don't do anything to fix the original problem, so it shouldn't be solved. Things happen to Sakata and Mai in the movie and they react accordingly. And when they are finally ready to act instead of react, they are just given their goal. I realise I've made this explanation very long. I just really want to make my point clear and try to make sure it makes sense. But then I thought about it this way. Shoko was the one who brought about Timeline C, and then I thought about all the actions that Shoko had taken, or should I say, all the different versions of Shoko. The older version of Shoko, Shoko-san, that we see throughout the series has come from a timeline where Sakata has died and his heart was donated to her. The younger Shoko, Shoko-chan, had her heart transplant from Mai, meaning the Shoko-chan we see in season 1 and this movie is a different Shoko to the Shoko-san we see in the series and the movie. Imagine the grandfather's paradox. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather before your parents were conceived, would you cease to exist? And if you cease to exist, would you then be born again as you wouldn't have existed to kill your grandfather? So he would have ended up conceiving one of your parents who conceived you? Following along? In this movie, as there are different timelines, the grandfather's paradox does not apply. So if someone popped Shoko-chan, Shoko-san would be unaffected. To try and avoid confusion, let's add the letter of the timeline each character is from to their name. So in the movie, Sakata is Sakata B, Mai is Mai B, Shoko-chan is Shoko-chan B, etc. And Shoko-san is Shoko-san A. To make it a bit more confusing, there are two versions of Kaede as well. The panda-loving shut-in we see throughout the series, the show calls her Kaede-chan, and the one with her memories, who is just Kaede. So there are two versions of Kaede for each timeline. In the series and the movie we have Kaede-chan B and Kaede B. We all clear on that? Don't worry, me neither. When Shoko-san A was Shoko-chan A, she met with Sakata A and Mai A presumably at the same point in the series when deciding to look after Hayate A. She got to know the two but gradually got iller and iller and was hospitalised. Sakata A visited her every day in hospital, picked up a donor card, and on Christmas Eve went to go on a date with Mai A at the Enoshima Light Show and was unfortunately run over by a car. Unfortunately, the dude is a fictional character. Oh no, how could this imaginary event happen to this imaginary person? The horror! His heart was transplanted to Shoko-chan A, who had fallen in love with Sakata A and wished to have all of these different experiences when she was older, such as meet the boy of her dreams, go to college, get married like her parents did. And when she was finally at the age to do these things, her heart longed for the one boy she had always loved. Or his heart longed for him, I guess. Wow, Sakata's a narcissist. The desire and probably some weird quantum entanglement of them sharing the same heart caused her to travel back in time to one of Sakata's worst moments, when Kaede lost her memory. So how does Shoko-san A know to go back in time to these specific points? My guess is that Mae told her, because we know that after Sakata A dies, Mae is the one who tells Shoko-chan A about the transplant. It's not unlikely that Shoko-chan A and Mae kept in touch after this, and the two could have talked about their time with Sakata A. A. Is this how Canadians talk? Shoko-chan A. Shoko-chan had gotten to know Kaede-chan, who was hospitalized when the original Kaede came back, so Mae was probably forced to explain about Kaede's puberty syndrome, that Sakata looked after her, and how he was distraught on both occasions when she lost and regained her memory. So Shoko-san A knew at which point in time Sakata needed support. But to top it off, when someone goes back in time using Shoko's powers, information is also brought back with them and goes to those quantumly entangled with them. And who else would be quantumly entangled with Shoko but someone with the exact same heart? So Sakata B develops those scars on his chest. They meet on the beach and Shoko-san A is able to help Sakata B like Sakata A helped her. She gives him the resolve to look at this new Kaede as her own person and make him decide to go to Minagahara High School and meet Kunimi and Futaba, as well as notice Mai's plight and want to help her, to continue the kindness Shoko-san A showed him. The next time Shoko-san A is in the series is when she leaves a note for Sakata telling him to meet her at the beach in episode 10. Sakata intends to go but meets Kaede's friend and Mai goes in his place. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how amazing Mai is? That adorable, dommy mommy, pocky loving lady. She acted like a reasonable human being when Sakata told her he wanted to meet with Shoko, whereas in most anime, girls would like punch him or something. When Sakata does go to the beach, he and Mai just decide to go home as Shoko-san A has yet to show up, and Sakata leaves a message saying he now has a girlfriend, which narratively works as a resolution of Sakata saying he has gotten over Shoko. Later, when Kaede's memories return, Sakata is in a dark place and Shoko-san A appears once more and takes care of him for the night. Once again, Shoko-san A returned the favour of helping Sakata. However, it's not explained why Shoko-san A wanted to meet Sakata on the beach. It didn't cause Sakata to change any of his actions. He still would have bumped into Kaede's friend without it, and if anything, it just wasted Mai's time. Neither of the two bring it up when Shoko-san A is looking after Sakata B, and I was hoping the movie would explain it, but it's never brought up. Why did she want to see him? Shoko-san A then reappears at the beginning of the movie where she suddenly announces she wants to live with Sakata. I didn't really like Shoko-san from here to about here, because everything she seems to do was trying to NTR Mai. I now understand why harems are such a wishy-washy male protagonist, because if they don't and the MC has a good relationship and chemistry with one of the girls, the viewer will really like that and then dislike the rest of the girls. We learn the reason Shoko-san A is doing this is because she's living out all of her dreams when she was Shoko-chan, falling in love with the boy of her dreams and even getting married. But when Sakata B goes to sacrifice himself at the aquarium, he realises the crash does not happen there, but at the light show, which was the date spot in timeline A. Shoko A learnt from Mae that Sakata A died going to their date at the Enoshima light show. She went back in time wanting to spend time with the boy she loved and fulfill all of these fantasies, and told Sakata B to meet her at the Enoshima light show. When Mai B and Sakata B are discussing date plans, Mai B suggests the Enoshima light show, but Sakata B rejects this and chooses the aquarium as he doesn't want Mai to see Shoko-san and to show Shoko-san that he has chosen Mai. It becomes symbolic to the audience that the Enoshima light show represents Shoko and the aquarium represents Mai. It's not until he is waiting for the crash at the aquarium that he realises Shoko-san A has played him, as she made him rule out the place he would die as a date spot. I firmly believe that the reason Shoko-san A was so annoying and overbearing at the beginning of the movie was to make herself seem less likeable, so Sakata would not want to save her. She did want to spend time with Sakata, but I think she made certain to not respect his relationship with Mai, to make the two dislike her just that little bit more, and I realised she was an absolute genius. I also realised at this point, because Shoko-san A wanted to return the favour and save Sakata, she was also in the same mindset as the other two, wanting to save two people and sacrifice one. Shoko wanted to save Sakata at the cost of her own life. Now, this plan doesn't work. Sakata B realises this and then goes to the Enoshima light show to sacrifice himself, only to be stopped by Mai B, who has also figured out Sakata was meant to die at the light show and sacrifices herself to save Sakata B. Whilst grieving, Sakata B is then found by Shoko-san, and he asked how she is still here, to which she tells him Mai's heart is now inside of her. Now, Shoko-san A has Sakata A's heart inside of her. Shoko-chan B receives Mai's heart, and she has the same puberty syndrome as Shoko-chan A, as it came about from the heart problems. The older version of the same person results in a split of wanting to grow up and not wanting to grow up, and I believe Shoko-chan B experienced a split. Shoko B would have grown up, listened to Sakata's grief, and possibly even remembered it at the end of the movie, as we learn. She had been dreaming everything Shoko-san A had been doing, and when she met the criteria to fulfill her wishes, being a college-age student, she could go back in time to fulfill her desire to love and save Sakata B by having him go back in time and save Mai at the cost of her own life. This Shoko-san that we see for this small sequence of the movie is a different Shoko-san to the one that we see in the rest of the film. Shoko-san B. B's nuts. Shoko-san A was not present after Mai died and was missing for 4 days. This is because the connection of Sakata's heart no longer existed as Sakata B survived. But wait, doesn't that mean it is a grandfather paradox? But the way the time travel rules have worked so far has been from different timelines. I am like 20 minutes in, I'm not scrapping this project now. Maybe when such a drastic change happens, any forces from the original timeline are booted out, so it's a branching path like this, or the linking point for all these timelines is something earlier, as shown in later in the film, where elementary school Shoko is doing her homework for her future desires, which sort of links to something in the third film. We are seeing the result of a new timeline, and because that new timeline is now affecting the timeline of the movie, in reality, that would make the timeline of the TV and the movie timeline C, but I'm not going to start calling it timeline C now. So, Sakata B goes back in time, but he is still in timeline B. But because now there are 2 Sakatas in the same timeline, the timeline is inherently different. So let's call the timeline where Mai dies and Shoko-chan B grows up timeline B1. And from this point onwards, we're in timeline B2. So here, we are looking at Sakata B2, and Sakata B, who saw Mai die and chose not to go back in time, is Sakata B1. Sakata B2 experiences essentially Mai's puberty syndrome of not being noticed, as he is an intruder to the timeline and can only be noticed by Koga, who is quantumly entangled with him. So does that mean that Shoko-san A was quantumly entangled with him? So maybe she was there at the beach in episode 10, but the only person who was able to perceive her would have been Sakata because they share the same heart, and she just happened to leave by the time Sakata got to the beach, and Mai just wasn't able to see her at all. But it still doesn't explain what she wanted to tell him. Sakata B2 saved Sakata B1, and the two fuse together, symbolising the combination of viewpoints, where Sakata B2 now wants to save Mai, himself, and Shoko. Can I also just say I really like how the movie does cover the first 3 puberty syndromes thus far. Mai's not being noticed, Koga's time loops and their quantum entanglement still being a useful organic plot point, and Futaba's body double and how it's solved when the 2 halves share perspectives. It's a bit of a shame it probably would have been a bit too convoluted to include Kaide's and Nodika's syndromes as well, but I'm glad I didn't have to hear this noise again. The irony is I had to hear the noise multiple times when I was editing this joke. Now, this entire time, Shoko-chan B has been in the hospital, and she tells Sakata B2 that she has been dreaming of all of the events thus far, and so has experienced them herself. Ergo, has grown as a character because she has experienced the events of the movie up to now. So she's been experiencing both Shoko-san's A perspective and Shoko-san B1's perspective. So these are branching timelines. Shoko-chan B2 then decides it's better for Sakata and Mai not to have to worry over her like this, and chooses to go back in time and change events so she never meets them, not causing them all of the turmoil they've just gone through, as Shoko-chan is connected to the 3 years younger version of herself who is writing homework where she has to plan what she wants to do with the rest of her life. Shoko-chan B2 then falls asleep and goes back in time, bringing back these desires instead of the desires of wanting to be with the boy she loved. And then everything in timeline B2 onwards is just unimportant, as Shoko-chan B is busy doing some other stuff to make timeline C. The viewer is left behind in essentially this irrelevant timeline. It's like watching the last episode of Steins Gate, but instead of following Akabe as he goes into the different timeline after the one he was in turns to shit, we're stuck in the timeline which has gone bad, which is the plot of Steins Gate 0. So everything about Mai B and Sakata B2 drawing a flower is just a symbolic end for the audience, as the two never got the attempt to fix things themselves. They fall asleep and time resets to timeline C, a timeline where Sakata, Mai and Shoko all survive. I do not like this ending if I view Sakata as the protagonist, as he did not get the time to live out his resolve to save everyone, but if I view Shoko as the protagonist, I think it's a very satisfying story. Now, in some ways it may seem worse, as her saving herself was seemingly accidental. She went back in time and brought memories with her which got linked to Sakata-C and Mai-C, who in turn made donations and brought awareness to Shoko's disease so Shoko could find a donor and be saved. However, Sakata spent most of the movie just trying to clean up his own mistakes. Shoko, every version of her, selflessly went to save someone else at the cost of her own life, which she saw as borrowed. She saw herself die over and over again in some sick ReZero-esque nightmare, and was still kind enough to want to do something about it, and none of it was her own fault. Shoko's arc went from wanting to build a future around being with Sakata to deciding on giving up on him, yes, in service of him, and not causing him pain, and not for herself, but because she still did decide to leave him, and in doing so, when she goes back in time, her life goals then become focused on herself. Shoko was completely selfless in all of the actions she took in the movie to ensure Sakata would be happy, while the entire time not wanting to die. And when she took the ultimate step of distancing herself from him by making it so they never meet, she was rewarded with her life being saved. She made a sacrifice and received the reward of living. Shoko earned this outcome. Sakata took the entire movie to essentially get back to where he started. I understand why we follow Sakata's perspective. He's the main character in the series, and we have the emotional investment of his character, Mai, and their relationship. But I honestly think I would have preferred the movie if it was from Shoko's perspective, as I believe she was the more active character, whereas Sakata was more of a reactive character. Especially because now the only character from this point onwards in the series that we the viewer know properly is Shoko. She created a new timeline where Mai and Sakata took personal interest in her condition and spread awareness for it, which resulted in finding a donor for Shoko when she needs it. I assume other than Sakata's and Mai's interest in Shoko's condition, things play out like timeline A, where there isn't a Shoko-san helping Sakata in his dark moments, so he pulls himself out of his depression to help Kaide-chan and goes to Minagahara High School out of his own volition. Like I said earlier when I was talking about time loops, they should only work if there are streamlined events of a non-paradoxical set of events. And then the events of the first series play out roughly the same, with him helping Mai because of Kaide's puberty syndrome and then so on. So it turns out whenever Shoko-san A did help Sakata B, she was probably just streamlining events so they happen quicker, as Sakata would have gotten there on his own eventually. Shoko is the only character who has memories of how the viewer has experienced the series, so it's interesting that everyone else from this point onwards is a new version of the character we knew. So in some ways, everyone we know is dead. It's like how in the CW series The Flash, there was a future version of Barry at the very beginning of the show who we never saw again because the timeline changed too much. Let's hope this series doesn't get as messy as that one though. In terms of analysis and fan theories that I have, there's not a lot to talk about in the second movie. Anything that is relevant is further developed in Knapsack Kid, so I'm just going to talk about that then. But in terms of stuff that's important to the story as a whole, this is basically a sequel to the last arc of Season 1, Kaide's arc. We last saw her recover from her memory loss and revert to her initial personality, which sadly means we now lose out on gems like this. Kaide's puberty syndrome came from her bullying and subsequent stress that was put on her and her family, which manifested as her losing her memories and gaining an aversion to going outside. The end of season 1 was a treatment of her symptoms, not the cause. She still has this aversion to reintegrating into society, and this movie is about Kaide's journey into doing it. What's most important going to season 2 is that Sakura finds an online school which Uzuki attends, the main girl at the start of season 2. This is how Kaide and Uzuki meet and become friends, or Kaide just becomes a fan of hers. The other big development is that Kaide and Sakura make an effort to reconnect with their father, who, if you've forgotten, doesn't appear much because he's taking care of their mother, who had a mental breakdown when Kaide had hers. Guess it runs in the family. All in all, the story is quite tame after all the time travel shenanigans of the first film, but don't worry though, the third film gets just as crazy. I think I should get the most important detail of this film out of the way first.
来年に備えて勉強を教えてあげる。
バニーガールの格好で教えてくれるなら行こうかな。
あんなのもう捨てたわよ。
そんな!
The film starts at Mai's high school graduation, with Sakura and Mai on the beach, but not just any version of Mai. Mai is a little kid. To introduce himself to her, Sakura tells child Mai that he goes to Minagahara High School. She says she's lost, but when the high school graduate Mai appears, the child Mai disappears. So Rascal does not dream of girl venturing out, focused on Kaide, and starts to undo the damage it caused to their family. This film picks up on that, with Sakura and Kaide finally getting to see their mother again, which goes well. Now that Kaide is better, there is nothing to agitate her mother and cause her to spiral like before. But while Kaide is ready to have her family back together, Sakura isn't. And now we finally get a case of puberty syndrome for our protagonist. Sakura's puberty syndrome works very similar to Mai's in that people stop being able to perceive him, starting from his mother. Mai's puberty syndrome came about from pushing against wanting to act due to how her mother treated her to get her the opportunities in the industry, even though she in fact wanted to be an actress. Sakura's puberty syndrome came from having to take up the role of his mother from Kaide at a young age. He felt abandoned by his mother, so he removed her from his thoughts, his life. And when they finally reunite, the puberty syndrome that was dormant can finally spark, with Sakura's mother now unable to perceive or remember him, which begins to spread to the rest of the family and then everyone in Sakura's life. The puberty syndrome also shows itself physically, similar to the scars on his heart from Shoku's puberty syndrome, but now it's a scar on his belly. Sakura has cut the connection between himself and his mother, which is symbolised by a mark reminiscent of an umbilical cord, literally cutting the connection between mother and child. By the end of the film, Sakura is able to come to terms with his feelings of abandonment and reconnect with his family. What I think is important isn't Sakura's puberty syndrome, but actually something that happens alongside it. The child Mai on the beach. During the course of the film, Sakura meets her 3 times. The first I mentioned at the beginning. The second is when Sakura is at his lowest after he can't be perceived by anyone anymore. Unlike before when Sakura asked if she was lost, now it's child Mai who tells Sakura that he's the lost one and that she can help bring him home. Except this home that she brings him to is somewhere Sakura has never been before. It's an alternate universe. I told you this film would be just as bonkers as the Dreaming Girl one. In this new universe, Sakura stood up for Kaide when she was being bullied and was able to stop it early, causing her puberty syndrome to never develop. Sakura still went to Minagahara and became friends with Kunimi and Futaba. He still became acquainted with Nodoka and most importantly, is still dating Mai, who still had a bunny girl outfit, which is where we learned she threw it out. One of the biggest differences is that a girl Sakura knew from his middle school, Ikugi Akari, also attends Minagahara in this alternate universe, where she doesn't in the universe Sakura comes from. Like how Girl Venturing Out introduced us to Uzumi, the first girl to get puberty syndrome in season 2, Knapsack Kid introduces us to the second. As it seems, Ikugi also attends the university Sakura does at the beginning of season 2. Sakura decides he needs to fix things with his actual family after spending a day in a perfect world, and meets Child Mai one last time when she brings him back to his original universe. My question is, why exactly did this happen? Meeting a child version of his girlfriend has nothing to do with his puberty syndrome. If you list out the events that happened, it doesn't really push him to fix the problem either, because either way, the older Mai would have found the marriage certificate that they joked about at the beginning of the film, and Sakura would have gone to reconcile with his mom. So I don't really think the child Mai was part of his puberty syndrome, but something else entirely. Like how when Kaide lost her memories, Middle school Sakata was approached by Shoko-san on the beach, but she had nothing to do with Kaide's puberty syndrome, and there are more parallels. They talk about going to Minagahara High School. One clearly doesn't come from the same place. Shoko-san didn't come from the same time. Child Mai clearly doesn't come from this universe. When Sakata met Shoko-san, he was lost and she found him on the beach and helped him get back up. When he met Shoko-chan, he was now the high school student, so what does it mean when he meets an elementary schooler Mai? We had a loop of a 3-year difference before, and now we have what seems to be a loop of 10 years. Or maybe it always was. Remember what I said earlier? Dreaming Girl only happens because of Shoko-chan doing her homework when she's much younger. It's possible there's always a 10-year gap. So maybe Mai made an important decision 10 years ago. Maybe we'll find out Sakata did as well. I hope this isn't the only time we see this version of Mai. Part of me thinks the child Mai isn't what she normally looks like, but maybe she put on a face that Sakata trusts so she could help him before carting him off to a new world. Maybe it'll be revealed that she's the personification of puberty syndrome, and Sakata and co will have to fight her like how every JRPG ends with high schoolers fighting God. But when Sakata was sent to this other universe, the Sakata he replaced was sent to his. Bro woke up in an apartment he doesn't recognise, in a world where no one perceives him, and just leaves a message telling his other self that he's got this. What a Giga Chad. The last important piece of information is at the very end of the film, which is also the opening scene for Season 2. So for the poor people who went straight from Season 1 to Season 2 and opened with Shoko telling Sakata that she's the only one who remembers the original timeline of events, I hope they realise they were probably missing something. And if you found this video as a result of that, hi! Shoko tells Sakata that out of all of these timelines she's experienced through alternate future versions of herself, there's one big difference between the current timeline they're in versus every other than Shoko having a new heart. There is an existence of a girl who she has never heard of before, or at the very least a girl who has only risen in prominence in this version of events, Toko Kirishima. And then Shoko leaves the story wholesale. The girl who was at the centre of so many mysteries in Season 1, who capstoned the story and gave it a good stopping point by ushering the audience into a new timeline at the end of her movie. She now just leaves us in uncharted waters with a much more mysterious captain sailing the ship. I wondered why we were doing a Season 2 now after one feature-length movie and then 2 shorter ones, but I get it now. Those films were a transition period. The first film concluded the big mystery settled in Season 1 with Sakata's scars and the question on if Shoko would be a threat to Sakata and Mai's relationship and who she was as a whole. The second movie continued Kaide's arc with a character we weren't familiar with, as she was fundamentally a different Kaide to the one we knew in Season 1. And the third film has the Asasagawa family finally mend themselves and have Sakata come to terms with his own internal conflict from that, all the while starting to sow seeds on what was to come. Now in Season 2 we have a fresh slate, new characters, new mysteries, a new setting. We've hit a new story arc, the first being defined by the high school setting. Now we're in university. A lot of the familiar characters are gone. Yes, Mai is still a giant force in the story, but Futaba has been relegated to night school, and Gigachad Kunami has been written out and replaced by this guy, and that's just how life is. I really like the realism of a change in setting that will change the people you talk to. Allowing these characters to grow up makes already real characters with personality and good dialogue feel even realer, something lots of other anime never do. For all of the insane plot points and pseudoscience that goes on in this story, it's stuff like this that keeps it very grounded and the world immersive, and is one of the best things about it. Now they just have to let Sakata and Mai goddamn kiss already.